Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about how the wrists should work in the backswing and certainly some common themes that I see. So let's get into it. So there are two common patterns that I see in the backswing for when people are trying to make a change or certainly adjust their takeaway. And one of the first things we see is people try and pick their wrists up too quickly in an effort to keep the club head outside of the hands. Okay, so a lot of people don't want to see the club head whip inside too soon. So in an effort to do that, they start to hinge their wrists, what we would call radial deviation. Okay, so where the thumbs are moving upward like this. Now, there has got to be some of that in the swing, but when we add that too soon or too much, we start to see the club pick up. We start to see the club go too far outside the hands, but more importantly, we start to see that club face open. So when the wrist angles start to go into this position, this radial deviation, there is a lot of cupping that can happen alongside this. Okay, so if a person tries to pick their wrists up the most, there will generally be some amount of cupping in the wrist. Now, providing you've got the correct grip style, cupping may be a good option, but for a lot of guys, when you start making a backswing and hinge the wrist up and start getting this cupping position, we can start to get the club face a little bit too open, and sometimes we might struggle to recover that. So if I start to show you what that might look like, if I had a player moving their wrist too upward as they start to turn away and getting quite a lot of cup in the wrists, you might see a club face that plays quite open and potentially starts to curve a little bit more away from the target and come out a little bit weaker because it has a little bit more loft. So that's certainly one of the things that we see. The other takeaway type that we see is where the left wrist or right wrist start to bend backwards and solely backwards. Okay, so we don't have any of this upward hinge at all this time. So this is where a player would make a backswing and set their wrists a little bit more back on themselves, but nothing else. And that's when we would typically see the club head start to hood a lot, go quite low and around the player, and then they might have to make some adjustments from there. So it is common that we would see a club that would travel too far underneath the plane line, be a little bit too far inside, and then the player has to react to make a nice downward attack. Because it's important to remember that when we're playing the sport, we're playing on a tilted axis. So we will figure out that we need to swing somewhat in this angle to fall down onto the golf ball. And if my club falls way below that, I'm going to have to make some form of adjustment to try and make that nice downward attack. Alternatively, as I mentioned, you may well see a player that just gets the club really, really hooded and again struggles to return it from there. So if I just solely bend my wrists to the right, which is this angle here, just moving back on themselves, and I had very little upward hinge, again, we would see that club fall a little bit underneath. So let me show you what that would look like. And again, I had to react in a certain fashion to be able to strike that golf ball. Or, as I mentioned, we might see a player that gets the face too shut and really struggles to launch the ball or not hit it to the left. So, how should the wrist work? Well, we need a little bit of both. So, I learned this technique a little while ago where you just hold both hands out in front of you, and providing you're a right-handed golfer, in your left hand, I just want you to provide some upward hinging. Okay, so literally using that radial deviation. And in your right wrist, you are going to pull it back, just like we learned a moment ago too. Now, ideally, we need both of those blended into one. So yes, we need to make sure that we have some upward hinge, but we also need to make sure we've got some backward hinge to allow the club to then travel around us and be able to keep the face somewhat square. So if you set yourself up like this, hands in front of you, and you start to hinge your left wrist up, right wrist back, then put your hands together and do them at the same time. And from here, you'll start to get this diagonal hinge. So yes, I can see this is hinging a little bit backwards, but I'm also able to hinge it a little bit more upward as well. So it starts to move a bit more on the diagonal axis. Now, if I start to grab the club and I feel those two movements together, I can see that the club is lifting. I'm starting to hinge that club up in the air, but I can also see it starts to move a little bit more back on this curve, and the face is a little stronger. So for me, the face being in a neutral position would look like, if this is a 12 o'clock position, I would like the face slightly more down from that. So in my eye line, perhaps 11 o'clock. So as I start to get these wrists hinging correctly, I can get a nice blend of the club moving upwards, inwards, and keeping the face nice and square. So now I've got that sensation. Just going to have a few waggles feeling that, and then let's see what I can produce from there. I felt like that was a pretty good blend of the both. So I hope that makes a lot of sense. So I hope this short video into how I like the wrist to work make a lot of sense to you. And if you did like the video, please give it the thumbs up. And if you could subscribe, it would really mean a lot. Thanks, and I'll see you all soon.